The Canon EOS R5 Mark III is expected to hit the shelves sometime between late 2027 and mid-2028. So if you'd like to have some influence on what changes we could see in the R5 Mark III, we have to speak up now. I put together a list of the most requested features from pros, viewers like you, and even a few hints hidden in Canon's own patent filings. And if you're serious about staying ahead of the latest camera gear, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I promise you it's more fun than reading a newspaper upside down. Changing out the sensor quite literally changes how the camera sees the world. And with the R5 Mark II, we saw great improvements in readout speed, dropping that speed all the way down from something like between 19 and 27 milliseconds down to 6.3 milliseconds. But the R1, without a global shutter, is able to achieve 2.7 milliseconds readout speed on a resolution half that of the R5. Now this is fast enough for pro sports and wildlife shooters, which is the primary market of the R1. But the 5 series, 6.3 on the R5 II. However, if you are shooting up close with the R5 Mark II, if you're shooting sports, if you're shooting, let's say, baseball, and the batter's getting ready to swing, well, you're going to still notice that rolling shutter. And that's where the R1 really comes in. That's why you see at a lot of sports events, people pay the extra and get the R1 or the R3, or they get a Sony, what was that one with the global shutter sensor? The Sony A9 III. So we definitely expect Canon to update the sensor on the EOS R5 Mark III. And to be specific, we expect Canon to improve the photoelectric conversion unit, plus boost the analog amplifier, the analog to digital converter, readout circuitry, and of course the image processor, which is a separate chip. If Canon can deliver a 45% processor boost that we've heard whispers about, we could see some serious performance gains. And that sound? That's the sound of the engineers out there doing the calculations. And yes, a 45% increase in processing power could theoretically allow the R5 Mark III to have a global shutter. Now, that sounds great. So in terms of readout speed, it's instant. No rolling shutter whatsoever. And for some, that sounds really great. If we take a look at the Sony A9 III, what we can see is really incredible results. But there's a payoff here. And that payoff comes in dynamic range, low light performance. What Canon's shown with the Canon EOS R1, you can actually increase the readout speed so that way there's no discernible rolling shutter. So you get that high speed. And more importantly, especially for wildlife photographers, when shooting in high ISO in low light conditions, sure, there might be a little bit of noise, but compared to anything else on the marketplace, nothing touches it, not even the A9 III. So my personal view of the sensor in the upcoming EOS R5 Mark III, I really do hope, and this is kind of my asking, and this is what I'm trying to get at with this video, is to let Canon know that, sure, we would love to see a global shutter, but what really matters more to us than anything else is reducing the rolling shutter, getting that readout speed down to something similar to that of the R1, and not sacrificing dynamic range, not sacrificing low light performance at high ISO, because that, as we saw with the R5 II, while I think that the R5 II has incredible dynamic range when it comes to video, well, what we're seeing from wildlife photographers is, well, they'd rather stick with the Mark I. Canon's also cooking up an updated Digic Accelerator chip for the R5 Mark III. This little sidekick will boost Canon's AI autofocus, letting the camera better predict subject movement, whether it's birds, athletes, or awkward interviewees pretending to be natural. And I don't think we're too far away from this. This is a clip I shot with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, along with a 100 to 500mm. Even with various grasses and reeds blowing in the way, the autofocus holds firm. And no matter what I tried to do, I couldn't get a better angle of this guy. But sometimes, the autofocus system in the R5 Mark II isn't perfect. There are still inconsistencies. And we hope Canon stress tests the autofocus system better with the Mark III than they've done with the Mark II. And the biggest reasons for the improvement in the autofocus tracking, predictive tracking in the R5 Mark II is the Digic Accelerator. The updated version in the R5 Mark III will use machine learning to adapt its focus tracking based on the scene, sports, wildlife, or talking heads. And yes, Nikon can already do this, so Canon, it's time to man up. Just like IBIS used to be a dream, a glint in our eye that maybe someday we would see a Canon camera with IBIS, some of us are asking the question, well, what about internal ND filters, electronic or mechanical? When can we see those? Well, we think that there's a very high likelihood that the Canon EOS R5 Mark III could in fact see internal mechanical ND filters. Why is that? Well, I've got a lot of evidence pointing in that direction. Canon's been filing an awful lot of patent applications about internal ND filters like they're going out of style. First off, there's JP 2023 12853. Then there's 128 236, 128 221, 129 247, 128 193, and 160 037. You get the point. The blueprints show designs that fit inside the 5 series as well as the 1 series. Imagine no more screw-in ND filters. Just imagine for a moment that whatever lens you went out with, no more, I forgot the ND filters and I can't do anything. Just imagine that. Now, some of you might have noticed the date of these patent filings were several years ago, so far back, in fact, well, not so far back, but back far enough that the R5 II could have indeed had these internal ND filters, but it didn't. Now, maybe there's good reason for that. Maybe it's cost. After all, the R5 II came out for a price of $42.99, and a lot higher than a lot of us thought, and maybe internal ND filters would have pushed it up a little higher. Maybe they hadn't properly tested it. They'd put a lot of goodness into the R5 Mark II and thought, okay, let's put a freeze there and let's just focus on bugs. Or maybe the marketing team said, no, let's save that for the R5 Mark III. Now, this is where I need your help. One of the reasons for the primary reason for putting out this video, it's to talk about this, to bring this up. Whenever you're talking to Canon, whether it's a support call, whether you're at a trade show, ask them internal ND filters. And if they play mum, copy down half a dozen of those patent applications. Say, look, we know you're working on it. Bring it out there. We're starting to see this in more and more cameras. I love ND filters, but most of the times I don't take them with me. Why? Because my memory's failing and I just want to travel with lighter gear. I've got arthritis in my spine. I don't want to carry a lot of weight. I don't want to carry a lot of gear. Camera, lens, and a microphone, and in a way, that's almost it sometimes. Screwing in and screwing out ND filters is not something I want to do, but to have it inside the camera that's switchable, that can turn them on and off. I mean, just look at these diagrams here. They're able to switch in and out of the way without adding much bulk to the camera. We can see the dimensions of the camera really aren't that different from what we see today. In fact, to me, yeah, I think that photographers and videographers could benefit from internal ND filters as long as Canon puts in quality ones. Pixel shift. No one does it better than Sony. The Sony a7R5. Canon, please bring pixel shift back. And I know what we have in the Mark I, it fell largely behind the competition, but this was your first attempt at pixel shift. If you're doing food or product photography or even architectural work, well then pixel shift is a big plus. The Sony a7R5 could do 240 megapixels, and they could even take into account moving subjects. That's a really big deal. Moving subjects, and some other cameras out there can do handheld. Now what we're looking for here is not any sort of gimmick. And I know what you did with the R5 Mark II with that AI enhanced upscaling, that's a gimmick because you're creating the photo for us. Sure, you're taking a photo that we take and then you're doing a lot of work to it. And basically what we see at the end is a computer-generated image. It resembles very little of what we took if you punch in. The wood grain is gone. The detail in the feathers is gone. So the whole point of getting a larger image is, well, there's no point. Pixel shift really matters to those of us doing product and food photography, even architectural work. I think what you could do is put it back in here from the Mark I, that pixel shift that you came out with, work on it a little bit more. Use AI to help a little bit, not on recreating the entire image, but in terms of the alignment, taking into account moving objects. That's where the AI could come in. And look, we get it. If there's something moving into the frame, sure, you might need to adjust the image a little bit in that area, but the overall image is good enough. It looks great. So please, bring back pixel shift. I'm not saying do it in a firmware update. We're willing to wait for the R5 Mark III. We just want it to be a 5 series level capability. Because AI upscaling, it is just a gimmick. And if you didn't think many people used pixel shift, far fewer use that capability. So yeah, AI is great. We love it in the Digic Accelerator for the autofocus system, but we got to stop faking images. Low light. Well, this is a very interesting topic. Now, this is where we're a little bit schizophrenic. A photographer's point of view of the R5 Mark II is different from a videographer's view of an R5 Mark II. From a video point of view, the dynamic range, 16 plus stops of dynamic range with the R5 Mark II, is far better than the Mark I. But for photographers, specifically wildlife photographers, that isn't the case. A lot of times, because you're shooting at dawn or dusk, you're shooting at high ISO in low light conditions, and that's a challenge for any camera. Unfortunately, various tests have shown that the R5 Mark I does a much better job of producing images with less noise, noticeably less noise, and that's a really big deal. So Canon, I'm a little bit puzzled here. Excuse me, let me get some water. I'm losing my voice here. This is why I'm puzzled, because the R5 Mark II gets a brand new 45 megapixel stacked sensor. I mean, I love this camera. It's amazing. The Mark I doesn't have a stacked sensor. It's not even backside illuminated. Yet it's able to produce better images at high ISO in low light conditions than the R5 Mark II. Look, I haven't seen any 3D X-rayed images of your new sensors. I don't know how the photosite's designed. I don't know what you've done to the photoelectric conversion device. I don't know what you've done to the analog to digital converter. There's a lot of components here that go into a chip, but essentially we're taking that circuitry from the top of the sensor and moving it way to the bottom so we have a larger well to capture more, well, electrons. And that allows us to, because we got a deeper well with more information, more electrons in it, that allows us to have better information in the shadows. So, a stacked sensor on the R5 Mark II should be better. We don't know why it isn't. But for photographers, the R5 Mark III, it should be better than the Mark II in every way, better than the Mark I in every way. And we need to improve that low light performance at high ISO. We really do, because you have a whole marketplace that looks to cameras like the 5 series. And I know what you're thinking, Canon. Well, then go to the R1. It's the best camera that you produce, right, in terms of low light performance. But you see, there's the issue. And I get it. A lot of photographers, such as Joshua Holku, believe very strongly that 24 megapixels is enough. But you have a rather significant market that wants more resolution, that wants 45 megapixels. Some people even want to see a higher resolution version of the R5 going to like 100 megapixels. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to weigh into that. But something needs to be done here, because the tests do show that depending on your shooting, there is a bit of a trade-off in terms of low light performance. And there really shouldn't be. So let's work on improving that sensor for the Mark III. Show us what you're capable of, because this is a bit of an annoyance with a lot of people out there. A lot of people shoot wildlife, and a lot of people are not too happy about this. But now let's talk 32-bit audio, something that photographers have no need for. But for us videographers, well, it's kind of a big deal. And it's something that Panasonic and Fujifilm already do. It keeps those loud sounds from clipping, and the quiet sounds, well, they're protected as well. Now, Canon could choose to do this in one of two ways: to come out with some sort of hot shoe XLR module, or internal dual AD converters. I recently purchased Canon's hot shoe mic that goes right here in the hot shoe. And at first I thought, oh my God, there's no options, but you actually press the menu button, and then what happens is, right on your LCD here, you see all your options. And there's one called Attenuator to turn it on and off. Now in the normal mode, if you're outside and your son starts shouting, or you get a car go by, you're going to get some terrible clipping, and the wind oh, it's just going to do terrible results. But you click that attenuator, you turn it on, it basically drops the floor level by about 20 decibels and everything's good, right? Well, then you forget, and you see something you have to constantly monitor. And the world doesn't work in 8-bit audio. Sometimes things get really loud and sometimes they get really quiet. And I'm using a microphone right now that is 120 bits. And now in this scenario, I don't really need that. But when I'm outside, well, it really comes in handy. I mean, surely Canon, this is something that you're working on, right? But now onto something that's causing an awful lot of grief among Canon R5 Mark II owners, and that's the battery. Now, as camera demands in the R5 Mark II have gone up, 8K video up to 60 frames per second, faster, better autofocus, able to track the subject, predictive analytics, being able to do long bursts. The battery needs to be able to keep up. Canon, it's time. Love the LP-E6 batteries, but it's time to talk about a new higher capacity battery. I don't know what you want to call it, whether it's the LP-E6X or a dual cell beast. We need more juice, we need less heat, we need it to last longer. And perhaps this could help with all the battery issues we're seeing out there. I did find it a little bit strange when the R5 II came out that if we use the LP-E6P NH batteries, no, LP E6 NH battery. It probably says it right on here. What is it called again? I can't remember. LP E6 NH battery. So that's the battery that came in the Mark I. If I put this in the R5 Mark II, I can't shoot 8K 30 RAW, but I could with the Mark I. There's a lot of modes, 4K 120. I can't shoot in here with this battery. I thought it was a little bit strange that if I used the battery that worked for me for 4 years inside the Mark I, inside the Mark II, that I lost a lot of the capabilities. I thought that to be a little bit strange. But then again, I realized, okay, so maybe the Mark I was cheating a little bit. It was being ultra efficient, or it was, how should we say, maybe sacrificing in some ways to deliver the results that you and I probably didn't notice too much. And that the R5's, the Mark II's new battery, the LP-E6P battery, would deal with that. I did notice a few differences between the Mark I and the Mark II. When I'm shooting video, for example, if I did a slow pan, one thing I would notice with the Mark I is, I wouldn't call it ghosting, but you could see a video artifact when you're panning. With the Mark II, I don't see that. Now that could be the new sensor. It could be the Digic Accelerator. It could be some efficiencies made with the Digic X image processor. I don't know. But we do know it takes more power to do some of the same things. There are a lot of issues reported out there. People having to pull the battery to get things working, autofocus problems, situations where they're having to replace the PCB. They're having way more issues than they should be. And I think this is high time that we go to a new battery. I'm not saying we need to go with an R1 size battery. I mean, that thing is big. But we need to change the battery. And you know what? Here's the strange thing, Canon. You stuck with the same form factor so we could use the older batteries. But the problem with those older batteries is they're handicapped so significantly, I can't use them. You could have done it with the R5 Mark II. So the R5 Mark III, we need more power, we need better performance, and we need it to last longer. The R5 III, please, that's really important. If the R5C is actually being discontinued, as we've been told, then the R5 III needs to fully replace it. That means active cooling, endless recording regardless of heat, cinema features like shutter angle, adjustable waveforms, and let's go ahead and dump that false color for the EL zone, along with dedicated time code, and give us more cinema options in the menus for video shooters. And since we're talking about the R5C, let's talk about some of those video resolutions and refresh rates. Now in terms of 8K 60 RAW, 8K up to 60 frames per second RAW, on the R5 III, yeah, for many of us that's more than enough. Very few of us are going to want more, but Nikon recently acquired Red, and the Red V Raptor can do 8K up to 120 frames per second. Now, I don't know if that's something you want to do at this camera level. It could cannibalize some of your higher end stuff, but It's coming. Whether you cannibalize your own stuff now or Nikon forces you to do it later, you might want to think of doing 8K up to 120 frames per second. Now, in terms of 4K though, 4K up to 120 frames per second should be fine. Right now in the Mark II, it's ridiculous that we're only doing fine up to 30 frames per second. That's not enough. We expect a firmware update in this camera to give us 4K 60 fine. But in the R5 III, most of us are going to be very happy if you can give us full sensor readout, 8K oversampled, 4K up to 120 frames per second in the Mark III. That's what we would like to see. And then go beyond that up to at 240 frames per second. Obviously not to do 8K oversampled all the way down. That's to do 4K 240 fine, that would be a big deal. We don't expect that. But when it comes to 120 FHD 1920 by 1080, let's go up to 240 and let's make it really good. Let's make it a whole lot better than the way it is today. I think we need to start pushing these frame rates. There are certain situations, especially if we're doing macro photography and videography, if we're shooting insects, if we're shooting birds, having that slow frame rate, but also to be able to capture the detail, that's what really matters. So 4K up to 120 with 8K oversample, so 4K 120 fine, that's going to give us a lot more detail and make that mode really, really huge for wildlife photographers and give them another reason to take another look at video. I think that's going to be, it's going to give them David Attenborough moments. But that leads us to our next conversation. And that's what I find in terms of this port here. This here is a dual card slot. It's got CFexpress Type B, V3, and an SD card slot that can read up to V90. You know what? I don't even put an SD card in here anymore. I'm basically running around as though it's a single card slot camera. I have too many problems. It actually makes my life more annoying because if I take out the CFexpress card and go ahead and do something, then put it back in, even though I've told the camera that you should always record video to the CFexpress B card first, it will jump to the SD card. Unless I tell it that only record video to the CFB card and only record stills to the SD card, but that creates other problems. I'm not going to be able to use that 30 frames per second for stills, and I'm not going to be able to dual record. So there's so many issues. Just for God's sakes, Canon, put dual CFexpress Type B card slots in this camera. Do it. There's no reason why you shouldn't. And when we were looking at the R1 to be a master of everything, have better video, better stills than the 5 series, sure, I could understand you're protecting the 1 series. But now, with the R1, there's no reason not to put dual CFexpress Type B card slots in here. Yes, it might raise the cost a little bit. Fine. Do it. We give you the permission. Look at the comments down below. Do it. It is just so frustrating. And I know there could be some potential heat considerations here. But you see, we already have a solution for that, don't we? Because in the Mark II, you already have heat pipes. So right down here, the air is sucked in and it comes out the side. I'm not wearing my glasses, I can't see where exactly it comes out. Comes out and it keeps things cool. Now, what you could do with the R5 Mark III to mitigate some potential heating issues is you could actually have an internal fan. Now, not make it a really loud one. And give us the option of turning it off, having it low, medium, high, and even an option where I call Smart Auto, where it's on in whatever mode we set it until we go ahead and press the record button, and then it will turn itself off or to a quiet setting where it's not noticeable. This makes an awful lot of sense. But we've been hawing about this for a while. And now that CFexpress Type A they support V4 cards, Sony's implementation of dual CFexpress Type A V4 as well as SD cards, it's looking pretty smart. So the R5 Mark III, you got plenty of time to design this. The overheating is no longer an issue. Please give us dual CFexpress Type B card slots. The R1 doesn't overheat. Come on, it's something we really need. Now, have I left anything out here? I've been talking a lot. Yeah, so I covered that. talked about the CFB. Good. Okay, so once again, this is not meant to show you leaked specifications of the EOS R5 Mark III. Anybody that's going to bring you leaked specifications at this point, they're probably going to be wrong. Why? Because we're so far away that they probably haven't nailed down the actual specifications for the camera. They're probably having a lot of internal meetings. They've probably taken stuff that was planned for the R5 II that they pushed into the R5 III, but I'd be surprised if they even have prototypes at this point. So the purpose of this video is to get your inputs, and I've already reached out to many of you. I've received a lot of feedback on things we would like to see in the R5 III. Let's share this video. Put in your comments. Tell people what you think, because Canon does actually follow this channel. Canon actually does listen, depending on who you talk to. People, videos like this get them an awful lot of interesting feedback. At a trade show, if you come up to Canon and say, hey, how about this in the R5 III? When you're talking to support, bring it up. And on their website, when they have that feedback option, let them know. Let's raise a little bit of noise, a little bit of awareness, because we're far enough away right now that we could, if we put enough pressure, we could start to see things change. That 30-minute record limit, that went away. Cropped video, lack of IBIS, they do listen. It just takes time. Sometimes it takes generations. And what we see for the 5 series is it generally takes 3 to 5 years to refresh, with 3 to 4 being the most common and 4 years being, well, the most often that it's refreshed. So while it is possible, if it's a minor update, we could see a refresh sometime in the second half of 2027. But my money is on the second half of 2028. And, well, let me say this. I would say it could happen anywhere from Q1, let's say mid-January, all the way up until, let's say, July, that we get the announcement. They could announce it, let's say, February the 10th. They could announce it CP Plus and then have it start shipping a month later or something like that. That certainly makes an awful lot of sense. CP Plus is the largest Japanese photo and video trade show. I'd probably say it's the largest trade show in the world when it comes to photo and video at this point. NAB doesn't count, that's cinema, but I'm talking about mirrorless cameras and all that sort of stuff. Since Photokina is no more, I keep hoping they bring it back, but it's not coming back, so CP Plus is the most likelihood. Anyhow, so let me know what you think you would like to see in the R5 Mark III. I'm going to pay very close attention to what you say, update this list, and then maybe in another 3 months, put out another similar video with feedback from what I got from this video. And just, you see what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to create a wave of noise to influence Canon, because we're not just some hacks. We buy the camera, we use the camera, we like the camera, we're their primary audience. They want to sell us more cameras. So what they want to do is they want to sell us a quality product and a product that we want. Thank you so much for watching this video to the very end. I'm not sure what time this video is coming out. There are sales on, but we're starting to see some of those sales disappear. Thank you so much for all of you that have used my affiliate links in the past. It's very much appreciated. By using those, I get anywhere from 2 to 5% back, and it really does help support this channel. Whether you click on one link and buy something else from the same retailer at the same sitting, it doesn't matter. I do get credit, and thank you very much. And if you want to go a little bit behind the scenes and find out and ask questions, I see a lot of people asking me questions and I don't have time to answer all of them. If you join and become an insider member, you can reach out and ask me questions directly, and I can even provide you a video answer. How about that? So click on join, and there's a couple of options. There's the insider, which is the one where you can ask me direct questions and get a video answer. We can also do private live streams, and then of course there's the Shutterbug, where you get loyalty badges and your own camera emojis for the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon.